See some people coming to join us today for the PASC Tech webinar. We're going to let a few more people come in before we actually fully begin, but we're very pleased to welcome you and hope that you will find a lot of what we're able to present to you today useful. We will be running more webinars on tech going forwards into the new year. There's all kinds of stuff coming through, some of which I get to hear about from people, companies wanting to partner with PASC. I see some of it coming through with businesses that partner with SuperControl and businesses that are startups. So there's a lot of stuff that we will have that can help us incorporate technology into our businesses. So I think I'm going to start because it's 11:03 and as it's recorded, anybody who wants to catch up, who joins later, will be able to do that. So we are recording this so that people can view it afterwards. That's the viewing figures are really quite good for people taking the time in the evenings perhaps to watch these webinars. So it is recorded. We're going to ask you, put your questions in the question box and we will gather those for the panel at the end, when all of the speakers will be available to answer any questions you have. We will do the panel, we'll do the questions all at the end so we can get through all of the presentations. So we won't stop after each one because actually a lot of the stuff sort of integrates. So it will be really interesting to have the panel answering the questions across the broader spectrum of all this technology. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome you to today's PASC webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm going to start by introducing Richard Vaughton and Deborah Heather from Properly and Quality and Tourism. Okay, so Richard is going to start and then I believe Deborah will then follow on. So this is a new app. I'm not going to steal any of their thunder and I'm going to hand over to Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. I'm going to put a presentation up in front of you. So, Robert, can I just share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. Hopefully you can see this.
Yes.
You've got it right at the end, which is a bit of a failing. So yeah, good morning. Thank you everybody for attending. This is a short presentation on what we would call a pilot scheme, which we believe is the first in the world between Properly and Quality and Tourism. And as the slide says, it's where technology meets standards. So Properly is a American startup from a few years ago who's now relocating most of its office space into Europe. And Quality and Tourism is a UK business. And I will let Deborah say a little bit about Quality and Tourism, Safe, Clean and Legal, which we're promoting. And then I'll jump back into Properly after that.
So yeah, good morning, everybody. Just reiterate what Richard said. Thank you very much for having us here. So quick whistle-stop tour of Safe, Clean and Legal it's a brand that we started in 2018 in response, to be honest, to the sharing economy and people really not doing the right thing by their customers. Many of you will know Quality and Tourism is a legacy brand. We used to run the Visit England accreditation schemes, the outsourced accreditation schemes. But the reason when we split for Visit England that we wrote this was recognizing the blurred lines, I think, within the industry, different operators coming in different places, and how the star ratings in lots of cases didn't help. I think common standard didn't relate very well to uncommon standard. So we wrote a scheme that was about consumer protection, and it's still very heavily focused on that. But we also realized as Quality and Tourism, we had to reinvent ourselves. The way we had run with Visit England was almost an old-fashioned inspectorate coming in with and counting your cutlery and all of that sort of stuff. We realized we had to change as times changed. So we became what's called a primary authority for tourism, and we cover the areas of trading standards, environmental health and fire safety alongside Cornwall Council, who keep a check on us. And the idea is basically that we're mixing now soft skills and software. So we don't come out and criticize too much. The whole point is to help businesses improve. It's really a business improvement plan. And the Properly app really helps us embed that and help people do that on a consistent basis. I'll pop it back over to you, Richard.
Yes, thanks for that, Deborah. You might want to cover the top 2 lines on this slide because I know they're close to your heart.
Yeah. So I mean, as COVID hit, obviously there was lots of research went on, and we were one of the people that did that through BVA, BDRC. So we did some consumer research, and it basically came out where we would have thought, I guess, and you all would have thought as operators, is that 79% of consumers expect cleanliness accreditation from their accommodation provider before they travel. You'd think it was a given, but it is an issue. And I think one thing we have seen from the pandemic is that customers are more savvy, just generally. The other point I wanted to talk about was the Good to Go scheme, which from Visit England, Visit Britain's perspective, started life as a code of conduct, but actually because of its lack of checking, it really has gained a reputation as a sort of marking your own homework process. And really not robust enough. I think Rich describes it as a useless piece of paper, and you can see that if they've endorsed so many thousands of properties and only 3% have actually been checked and none have been removed because of complaints, it gives it a lack of credibility. And I do think, and PASC have been very kind to promote our Safe Cleaning Legal as the most robust, the gold standard. And this is the differentiator, I guess, I'm trying to make at that point.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. Yeah, I'm the Brian Chesky comment. Anybody who uses Airbnb might be aware of this, and he did announce a couple of years ago that he verify all 7 million properties, which I think everybody realized was a step too far and has not succeeded at all. Verifying doesn't mean certification or anything safe, clean and legal. It just means that your amenities have been checked, and what they show as a listing is a listing. But it really requires technology to do any of these things at scale, which is why I'm sitting here alongside Deborah. And the final line on there is Booking.com, who is actually a partner of Properly as well, quite a deeply involved partner. 53% of travellers decided not to book accommodation because of negative reviews. And we also know that I did a fireside chat with Ryan Pearson of Booking.com. But just as we came out of COVID at the short stay show, and he either gave away or announced that the number of the millions of tick boxes that were put against their health and safety checks resulted in a statistically important number of bookings for nearly every one of those customers. So although We're Good to Go was a tick box and Booking.com used a tick box, it was, as Deborah says, marking your own homework too, which is never a good thing. It's like MOTing your own car. So the reason this comes together is A, volume. 80% of people globally own a smartphone. It's 81% in the United Kingdom. You get easy updates, easy online communication. Smartphones have cameras. We all, I've been an owner of properties and I've had to record the damage the guests have done in the past. And that was a photograph on the spot and actually held off to an insurance company. The data connections, Robert is sitting here from SuperControl, incredibly important these days. Everything is data transmitted these days, and therefore technology plays a really important part in the whole of the rental industry. And there is no doubt the big marketplaces, love them or hate them, they are all looking for unique standardization. They have no control over what goes on, but they really want everybody to actually pay attention, because the ones that pay attention are the ones that get the most bookings, are the ones that are going to be promoted the most. Back off to you, Deborah, for the right hand.
Yeah, no, and from our side of things haven't really changed. We're a third-party accreditation business. Obviously, we've got a proven track record in hospitality. We work across lots of sectors, lots of segments of the sector, from hotels to the sharing economy, from attractions to restaurants. We do the whole sector. We work very closely with DMO partners with an experienced assessment team, and we've got a hands-on approach. And I think one of the things that I really just want to emphasize about that hands-on approach, it is about business improvement. Our job is no longer to come and use the carrot and stick. This is actually about helping people really improve what they're doing. and helping them get that competitive advantage, as well as making sure consumers are protected. And it very nicely fitted into what Properly does as a tool that supports what we have always done as Quality and Tourism.
So I'll just give you 5 minutes on Properly, and consider putting a video in here, but there are videos linked on the last page if anybody wants to spend a couple of minutes looking at them of the app in action. There is an incredible amount of resource built into the app, which is why it would probably take the best part of an hour to run through everything, depending on how you would actually want to use the app itself. It's split into 4 groups. One is Learn. The app has an incredible amount of information related to quality management within the app. Manage means how you use that information and checklists to actually work with third-party services or cleaning or services yourself. There's a communication element to that. There's a capacity to build checklists into it. Third is Inspect, as you can see, and that's those photographs are actually from a cleaner who's taking photographs and in real time passing it back to the team. So the property can be inspected remotely in actual fact. We have a remote inspection team for generally managers who do not have cleaning teams salaried to them. They are used remotely and don't have housekeepers. And the third one is the marketplace, where you can access cleaners and third-party services within the app as well. We know there's a big shortage of cleaners on a global basis at the moment. And we all know that cleaners are, I think, the most important person, because without that, we're all going to get bad reviews. So if you dive a little bit into the app, this is screenshots of our collaboration with Quality and Tourism. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a number of skill sets that have been embedded. And these are the guidelines provided by Quality and Tourism in a list in different categories. If you move left to right, this expands on various of those categories and examples of what they are. They're used for learning and training and for qualifying cleaners as well, because cleaners can get badges if they've read these things. And these services, these particular skills can be used in the process of checklists, which is the part of the app which allows you to determine how your property is actually managed. This first one was skills, and they are general skills. There's everything from cleaning your oven to managing your Wi-Fi to all the Quality and Tourism stuff, about health and safety checks, measures, how you manage that part of your business. This is the checklist point, and this is how you would actually use a checklist with a cleaner, for example, or you can do it yourself. You choose checklist on the left. In the middle section where you see the photographs and the symbols, those can be clicked and checked to see exactly what they are. They would look something like the one in the middle here. You can then create the job based on the checklist that you've selected, which could be any number of things. Clean bedroom 1, do the beds, go to the kitchen, clean the stove, do the oven, do the floors, do the bathroom next. And you can create the job, which is the third picture, and put all the details in there relating to the property, the checklist you created, and this one's the Quality and Tourism risk assessment. This service provider will go and do 5 checks in terms of health and safety, and that will be carbon dioxide, fire, swimming pool safety, etc. You can set the start date, the duration. You can even send offered prices. And that will be sent off on the fourth picture to the cleaning company or the individual cleaner, and they will accept the job or refuse the job, and you can send it to multiple people. How do you sorry, go on, Deborah.
I was just going to say that at that point it comes over to us, does it not?
Yeah, it comes over to you. And the reason I've clicked the logo on the left-hand side is because this is a co-branded exercise for us. So we can't do what Quality and Tourism does. We can provide the information that tells you how to pre-accredit what you should be looking at, and we can do this at scale and improve the cost effectiveness of the Properly and Quality and Tourism program for safe, clean and legal accreditation. And if you click the logo in the app, you will head off to Quality and Tourism, which is Deborah.
So the software part from our business that's changed, I guess, since 3 or 4 years ago, is that you can now register and you upload documents to us for a desktop check before we come and check at property level. It's really quite quick, it's quite simple, it's the basic things that we know will cover off some of the safe and the legal pieces, you know, your gas certificate, your insurance, that sort of thing. This is all automated now, and it goes back to our office, who then do a desktop check everything's all right, ring you if they need any extra information or some details, and then we arrange to come and visit. But the beauty of this partnership is that actually we're solving some of the problems we've had from an annual inspection perspective. So I'm always aware that we come once a year to check a business, to make sure everything's going all right, but actually it's just a moment in time. The software part of what we're showing you here allows for the accreditation to be constantly rolling. So there's a chase system in it. So if your gas certificate is going to run out in 3 months' time, we will automatically chase you until you upload your new certificate. The same with any of the other parts that are obligatory to your business. And then the visit side of it is done through the Properly app, is done once a year. It's done, sorry, for the first year, and then after that, the Properly guys check it remotely for us. So it really stops us and makes us more sustainable, but gives a quick, more regular way of checking, whilst always keeping you accredited and not leaving you with a period where you might have some of your paperwork out of date or something like that. The other thing to say is from our system, you can upgrade and go into what's coming up as advanced safe, clean, legal, but also sustainability schemes. We still do star ratings if you want them, and for many people, a sort of hybrid version for marketing is important, depending on what your market is. And from a charging point of view, I mean, this whole system to set it up is around 195, depending on the size of your property, but then drops down to 99 in year 2 because we can automate so much of it. So we feel it's a really clever solution to some of the issues we had as an old school accreditation body. It's moved us on from a software perspective too. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. Yeah, really important is this is the capacity to do these things at scale. I'm personally absolutely convinced that this professionalization, which is probably overused in the industry, is going to be, let's not say compulsory, but it's going to be addressed at a marketing level. My ambition would be one day to actually have this as a scheme which is recognized, throughout the UK, but is also recognized by marketing channels. And definitely we have witnessed through the OTAs, in fact, that the use of these things does convert into greater numbers of bookings, more returns and higher margins. So professionalization, if we want to call it that, is something that is coming down the line. And we also know that because of the growth of the industry, we are seeing a lot of pushback in certain areas on this type of thing. So very close to the end, what Deborah just mentioned is something that gives you a very cost-effective way of getting accreditation. From the Properly side, we have for 4 months free on the advanced app, or a 50% discount for 1 year for new members. If you've got multiple properties, then just give us an email. And there's a mid-year accreditation check. The safety and the cleanliness and hygiene is part of the Safe, Clean and Legal. And we have a remote team which will use a specific check for your particular property. Do you want to say a couple of words on your packages, Deborah?
I think actually we'll just let's move on to the next one, and we can answer any queries separately. Okay. Thank you very much.
That makes sense. So last slide is there's a number of web links on here. They've got videos, the quality and tourism pages, getting started with Properly, a link to PASC, to Professional Association Self-Caterers, whose webinar we're on at the moment. If anybody wants to email me directly, please feel free. I'm very excited about this. I see this as something very big coming in the future, and I would love to understand how people can work with it. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Deborah. So we'll have some questions, I'm sure, about that at the end. I'm going to introduce now Robert Kennedy, who is kindly, as SuperControl is hosting this webinar for us. That's always a great help to us to be able to have that support. And so Robert is going to do a little introduction before he hands over to Tobias, but we're going to talk about beyond pricing. This is being used by more and more PASC members. You know, a week doesn't go by without lots of questions on this, which we can then refer to beyond pricing through SuperControl to find out if it would suit your business. So listen closely. This is another one which helps you professionalize and increase your margins. So without giving anything else away, I'll hand over to Robert Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Always a pleasure to host these webinars. I know that they're much appreciated by your members. So we are taking a bit of a different approach. Yes, today we're going to be talking about beyond pricing, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tobias, who is a user of beyond pricing as well as a member of our team at SuperControl here. So it's really based on experience and trying to answer some of the common questions or debunking some of the myths that go around about dynamic pricing generally and beyond pricing specifically. Just to sort of put a bit of context on this, I ran some data a day or two ago for Alistair, which I'm sure he'll be sharing the details of which soon, if he hasn't done already, and trying to compare 2019 versus 2021 performance over this last quarter of the year, in particular looking at October, which is obviously completed. And we did a bit of work on the average pricing over that period. And 2019 to 2021, lots of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of SuperControl bookings. Prices on average had changed by just under 6% over that period. So all that super high demand period that we've had, people need to get their prices right. And one of the ways to achieve that is through dynamic pricing tools like beyond pricing. So really, I just wanted to put some context around how important this is and how you can take advantage of this opportunity of extra demand. And as we move forward in the future, where we have peaks and troughs of normal demand. So Tobias, handing over to yourself to debunk some of the myths about dynamic pricing.
Thank you, Robert. That's great. So I'm just going to share my screen just so that everybody can see inside the beyond pricing account, just to demonstrate a little bit about how it works along the way. So as you mentioned, there are a lot of myths around the topic of dynamic pricing, and it's something that a lot of people find a little bit daunting as well. The biggest myth that I think succumbed to before I really started to look into it was the idea that by using dynamic pricing, you're also losing control in some form. So particularly this often comes out of the experiences that a number of clients have had in the past. We find where they've used somebody else's dynamic pricing tool, that maybe they've been with Airbnb or with cottages.com or an agency that uses dynamic pricing. And what they found is that it would tend to undersell them, or they felt like they had lost control over what was being charged to their guests. One of the things that really helped me to understand where that was coming from, but also to understand the difference between having your own dynamic pricing package versus using one of these third parties packages, is that they're actually almost working in the opposite way from each other. So, for example, having the use of Airbnb's dynamic pricing, for example, it's not actually trying to get you more revenue. What it's trying to do is to get Airbnb bookings, and it will tend to do that obviously by comparing your property to other Airbnb properties, it will also want to make sure that Airbnb is always the same or cheaper than any other platform where you might be marketing. So it's designed to get bookings through Airbnb, not to get you more revenue. It's the same with cottages.com. It's the same with a lot of these other third parties. Having your own dynamic pricing package, by contrast, such as Beyond Pricing, is aiming to get you more revenue. It won't necessarily be getting you more bookings per se, but it will be getting you more revenue for each of the bookings that you are getting. So in that sense, you're not actually losing control. You're having control over your own pricing, just in a slightly different form. So if you can see my account here, I will just talk through a little bit of a few of the areas where you retain control. So obviously, beyond pricing, the whole idea, like any dynamic pricing package, is to use a combination of your own historical data, where that's available, and live market data to make sure your property is always being appropriately priced. So it will look at what you've previously been able to let the property for over that span of dates, if that data is available, and it will look at the trends within your particular local geographical market and the booking patterns as well. So it will be tracking surges in demand, lessening off of demand, and the various patterns that go around natural sort of booking trends as well as particular events as well. So obviously COVID has been a particularly interesting study for a dynamic pricing. And just as a bit of context, I started using Beyond Pricing right when we reopened after the first lockdown, partly because I felt that bookings would be so different from the way that they were before, that it was really valuable to be able to more closely track those trends. And in my experience, it's been very, very important for me in reopening after COVID, and also in terms of really sort of reestablishing our business in a way, to be able to have a close eye on those trends. So to talk through a little bit of this this section of the dashboard here, I have complete control over how Beyond Pricing starts to calculate. So I can set what's called a base price here, and that's the point at which the calculations start. And I'll show you in a second how that works in practice. But it's the point, the sort of point within which the calculations can go up or down from. And I also have a fail-safe here in terms of a minimum price. And you can see here I've got 100 as my minimum price and 110 as my base price. And I've done that quite deliberately so that if in the low season bookings aren't very, there isn't a huge demand for bookings during that low season, then I'm giving it a little bit of room below my starting point to play, but not too much, because I know how much it's going to cost me to have guests in, and I don't want it to go below the £100. So if it were to go below the £100, it's not worth it given my fixed costs and cleaning and turnovers, particularly for my minimum stay, which is a minimum of one night in this case. However, I also want to give plenty of room for it to increase upwards on the basis of those booking trends. So the 110 point there gives plenty of scope for it to go up, but not too much scope for it to go down. And each business is going to be a little bit different. So one of the key things, and Beyond Pricing will suggest a base price and will suggest a minimum, but I initially had set my base price a little bit too high. And so I wasn't then seeing too many bookings coming in. I've then decreased just by £10, and then I found that the bookings were coming in at a much better rate because I was starting from the right point. And my health score here, which is how my property is pegging against the market, was then looking much better than it was previously. I can see how many bookings I'm getting in within 14-day period, and also how many bookings are above the minimum versus the minimum as well. And if I click into a property, I can show you how those calculations really work in practice. And one thing just to mention here is that my property in my market is somewhat unusual. So it's a castle, of which there are no direct comparable properties within Dumfries and Galloway. However, one of the things that I've been very pleasantly impressed by is how well actually my properties are being compared to other comparable properties within the market. So we're the only castle with a hot tub in Dumfries and Galloway. However, the guests who would be coming, if they weren't coming here, they would be looking at properties of a similar quality with similar value-added type features. So if it wasn't us, it would be a lodge at the luxury end of the market, or it might be a country house hotel. So there are a number of other properties that are in a similar quality level and crucially let for similar amounts. And so it's comparing me appropriately with our real competition rather than a room in somebody's house in the nearest village that's on Airbnb for £50 a night. It's being intelligent in the way that it's comparing us. This is one of the common sort of misconceptions, is that it's not going to pick up any kind of value-added type features in a property. Well, it is, but it's not going to just compare your cottage with other cottages with a hot tub. It's going to compare your cottage with a hot tub with cottages with sea views, cottages that have a very sort of high-end kitchen, luxury features, and a letting for a similar amount. So it is comparing you with your real market. And it draws the geographical boundaries very intelligently as well. And one of the things that Beyond Pricing is very strong on is making sure that it really understands local markets, and it will split counties up into local markets. So Yorkshire will be York City Centre, the Yorkshire Dales, and it will be a number of different local markets rather than just a broad brushstroke approach, which again gives reassurance as to the quality of the data that's being used. And it picks up local events as well. So if we look at, I don't know if we can pick up any local events, but for example, premium holidays, for example, here, we can see how calculations are working for the 1st of January, in this case, 2022. It's taken my base price, so that's the starting point for the calculation. And again, I have complete control over that on an overall basis. And I could also, if I wished, make any manual adjustments to a particular date or span of dates as well. And I'll just talk about that in a second. But here we can see my base price is 110. It's actually reducing 23 because of current seasonal trends in terms of booking. However, it recognizes that it's a Saturday, which is obviously a prime day for bookings to arrive on, and it's adding a significant amount more because it recognizes that it's within that festive period here. If we look further down, however, during a quieter period, sort of early January, but after the Christmas period has finished, it's again taken that base price. It's reduced because of the seasonal demand. It's also reduced in this case because we're looking at a Thursday, a less popular day of the week, but it's then had to raise it to the minimum. And that's again reassuring for me to know, because I wouldn't take a booking for the price that it would think of suggesting had it not raised it back to my minimum, my fail-safe as well. But then as we look further on, for example, it's starting to then again pick up trends in terms of premium events. Spring half-term holidays obviously is adding a premium here, and then popular seasons for holidays as we get towards April, for example. It's already suggesting prices for April, and those at the moment are slightly higher, because what it doesn't want me to do is to get booked up too early and too cheaply. So it will tend to put a slight premium. We can see, particularly if we go further later in the year, maybe if we look at, yes, here we go, in September, for example, it's added a premium because there's a little bit of less data to support bookings during September of next year. So it's adding a little bit of a premium to make sure that if I were to get a booking, I'm not losing out because of the lack of data or the lower quantity of valuable data that it can use to predict the price. So it will then, if I get a booking, it's increased for that reason. If I don't get a booking yet, then it will then be obviously monitoring, adding as much data as it can to continue to predict the prices closer to the date, working on that principle of supply and demand within the market. And if I need to, I have, again, complete control over overriding. So if I wished to override a particular date, I can just click on it. I can set it as a span. I can increase, decrease, or set a fixed price as well So I might do that if there was a particular local event in my area that hadn't been publicized yet, but I knew was happening, and I didn't want to get a booking for those dates too cheaply, whereas I knew as soon as it was publicized, then it could start to affect booking trends, but I want to make sure I'm ahead of the game on that. So that's a very brief talk through the kind of the typical areas of beyond pricing in the dashboard. The other couple of things to mention are pricing models. So beyond pricing is primarily a daily pricing model. So it will predict a different price for every single day of the year for 12 or 18 months if you choose to roll it out for a longer period. Within SuperControl, we do have other options in terms of short breaks as a fixed percentage as well, but I won't go into that now because I'm very conscious of time. So I hope that's been a little bit of a glimpse into beyond pricing, and I'm more than happy to follow up if anybody has any questions later on in this session.
Many thanks, Tobias. We will come. I've got some questions to answer for you to answer afterwards. Right, the last presentation today on the tech side is Andy McNulty from TouchStay. Andy, would you like to take the screen, please?
I would indeed. Thank you, Alistair. Robert, did you have a survey you were going to put up before this?
I will do it right now. Very simple question about to appear on your screens. Yes, no answer, just so that Andy can tailor his presentation. So that should have popped up on your screens now. I'll give you a few seconds to answer. So, and it looks like sort of 70% don't use your product and 30% do, if that helps.
Well, that does. The reason why we put that up is that I didn't want to do a full-blown overview of what TouchStay is and talk you through it if lots of people already use it, because that would just be a bit tedious to watch something you already use. It does, however, mean that there are some of you that don't use TouchStay, that do use TouchStay, that are going to see a product tour again. So what I will do is I will still do a bit of a hybrid. So I'll do something at the end, which is hopefully interesting for those of you who've seen TouchStay already and use it and are bored by my product demo of TouchStay, to have something at the end. So that's the way we'll do it. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen, but I'm actually going to share my device. If I can get this to work. Let's go to let's try that one. Who sees my device? Are you seeing you all in the background as well? So why don't we try and minimize everything? And, are you still all in the background?
We're not in the background, it's perfect.
Brilliant, good. Step one complete. I brought you here just because this is, for those of you who want to kind of see and feel and touch and work out what TouchStay does, it's our example guides page, which you can get from our menu structure by clicking on the demo button and clicking on example guides, and it will take you to this page. You'll have to excuse the slightly pixelated view. It's because I'm casting my phone to the screen. When you come and look at all this stuff from your own device, it'll be perfectly crystal clear. I'm going to go right to the end, not quite to the end, to this one here called the Green Lodge. I've picked this, first of all, because it's a UK property. But also because I want to show you what happens when you send this to your guests. I want to show you the process that they go through. And I'm going to click on this guide just so that it launches on the page. So this is what your guest will have experienced. You will have sent them a link to your properties guidebook. And for those of you who haven't got a clue what TouchStay is, it's supposed to replace the paper binder that sits on the coffee table, that gathers dust, that loses pages, that gets dog-eared, that people spill coffee on, etc. It's supposed to replace that and it enables you to then manage all of that content from your desktop. And then crucially, to be able to give your guests access to it directly on their device, also their laptop, their desktop, their tablet. And also, if you want to, you can save a PDF and send that to them or print it for your home, and they can do so too. So it does cater for those who don't want to use a digital product either. So you will have presumably in your SuperControl email flow or whatever booking system you're using, in the email flow, you would have configured an email to go to your guests, which has a link to the Touch Day guidebook. So this is not something you're having to manually send to them. You'll use your existing processes. And if you don't have a property management system, you've no doubt got a flow of emails that's going to your guests prior to arrival. So just slot this into one of those emails. Your guest will therefore click on the link and they'll get the guide. And as you can see at the top of the screen, it says add to home screen for faster access, even when offline. So I can click the add button, or I can click the X next to it. If I want to just click the X next to it, because I don't want this thing to do anything, I just want to review what this is, I can do that. And I can continue to view the guide connected to the internet. I can click the add button, which I'm going to do now, and just show you what happens. And it says to your guest, look, we're about to install this on your home screen. Are you okay? Click install. Message at the bottom saying it's adding it. And then all I need to do is to exit out of my home screen. You'll see there it's added it next to the We Buy Any Car app. And all I need to do is grab this. I'm just going to put it on a different page now. So I'm going to put it over here. So that's where I want my app to be. And if I click that, it now loads up the Green Lodge in a full screen view. Looks and feels like an app. And what's going on here is called a progressive web app. I don't want to get into the technology there, but essentially it has the benefits of an app that you would all know and love from the App Store or the Play Store, but your guest doesn't have to go to the App Store or the Play Store to add it to their phone. They just do what I just described and they're in. So front page, you've got, you can see branded options. So you can put your logo at the top. The welcome to message, I probably wouldn't include that, but you can do. That's a free text area. And then there's the name of the place that the guest is staying together with the address. And you'll see a slightly sort of lime greeny color scheme. That's up to you. You can pick whatever color scheme you want matched to your branding. And then at the bottom, 3 tabs, home, info, map, just simple navigation to get you around. So most people will click get started because that seems like the big obvious thing to do. And here on the page, you've got the simple template structure. When you first start with Touch Day, you'll get given a template so that you don't have to sort of stare at a blank white page and figure out how to build the guidebook. You'll get a template. It looks very much like this one. They've configured theirs slightly, so you can see it says welcome to the Cairngorms. Obviously yours wouldn't say that, and they've got a Green Lodge Aviemore one there. Yours wouldn't say that. So what I'm saying here is you can adapt the template to make it your own. Add new sections, remove sections, rename things, up to you. And then as a guest, all I need to do is follow the prompt. So if I'm interested in, well, let me read about their welcome message. I'll click the one at the top left, and there's a simple message that's been written here that welcomes the guests. I could click on my arrival information, and I might want to know, well, what's my arrival time and what do I need to do to check in? So here's my lockbox and keys, and this is what I need to do. This is what time I need to check in. You know, this is what I could expect when I get to the front door. So lots of easy, simple text box exercise here. This does not require you to be a website developer or a coder or understand programming. I've had self-confessed technophobes that say to me, I can do this, finally I can do something. So don't, like, you know, if you are one of those who is a bit of a technophobe, chill, like this will be fine. You'll be able to do it. It's nice and simple. I could go on and show you other aspects of this, but I won't. I'm going to jump to the map. The other thing that it's got here is a mapping function. So, and none of this stuff is stuff that you have to kind of go through a painstaking process of populating. We integrate with Google Places. We don't populate stuff for you, but we have an integration that allows you to use a search box inside Touch Day in which you type the name of the restaurant you want to recommend, and it finds it in Google, and then we'll add a pin to the map. It will do this kind of stuff that you're seeing here. So I could actually use the filter button at the bottom to say, well, today I'm interested in restaurants. So I'll click on restaurants. It filters the map to show me only restaurants. The blue house icon is where I'm staying. So I could zoom in and say, look, I don't want to go too far tonight because I'm tired. What's this restaurant nearby? It's La Taverna. I can hit read more, and it takes me into the guide here where there's the listing. And crucially here, there's a little, underneath the reviews, you'll see 2 icons. The one to the right is a website link. So if I click that, it takes me off to the restaurant's website where I can book a table, read the menu, etc. So that in a nutshell is what TouchStay is. It can do lots of other things, like you can put video in here so you can show people how to operate the keypad on the front door or the tricky hot tub instructions, or a video of yourself welcoming your guest. You can internally link content. So if you've got something in one section and you want to link it to another section and you don't want to have to explain to the guest where to go and find it, you just place a hyperlink to that section. See a search bar at the top here. So a search bar, if I didn't want to navigate the menu structure and I was just interested in what time is check-in, I can start typing, and you can see it's found me 2 subjects that have the first 4 letters that I typed. Check-in time, brilliant, that's what I want to know about. I click that, it takes me to the relevant section where check-in time is. So nice and easy navigation, low maintenance stuff for the guest. Okay, at that point, I'm going to switch now to the to a different presentation. I'm going to have to bring it back on my screen. Let's find it. Okay, so this is the stuff for, well, for everyone, but for those of you who didn't want to see TouchStay again, but want to find something useful, this is a presentation that we did at the Premier Cottages annual general meeting a few weeks ago. And do you all see that nice full screen? Yep. Okay, cool. I'm not going to go through all of this because there's lots of stuff that what is TouchStay briefly, and I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to quickly flick through here. The one thing is to say, this screen is quite important. You may look at TouchStay and go, so what? I like my digital thing. I like my paper binder. I like my thing. Why do I need this? The resounding answer is your guests love this. We get so many comments now, not just on OTA reviews. So like you will find us reviewed by guests who are reviewing the property they stayed at and mentioning us in FIFO reviews on Airbnb, etc. But we frequently get feedback from our own customers that say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much my guests like this. So it definitely is a winner for guests. This one I love. Can I just say OMG TouchStay? This was one of our customers who was one of those who was a bit sort of leery about what is TouchStay and why would I use it? It's been a total game changer for her. And she said that she's had virtually no questions from her guests during her busy summer period because they found the answers in the guide. I'll quickly, this is a quick map of the world, like where we are. We're today in about 17,000 properties worldwide. You can see pink is the denser part of the world where we are. So you can see we're very much US, UK, and Australia. Let's go. But what I want to get across is that we primarily serve smaller businesses. So over 90% of our users have less than 10 properties. So this is not, this is definitely a product that can work for small operators and large operators. But this is the bit I wanted to get into. What has 2021 told us? So over the course of the pandemic period, we made it one of our missions to get more connected with our own community. So these 3 strands: on the left, guest podcast; in the middle, webinars; and on the right, our own community. So we started a podcast, and the podcast on the left, we spoke to guests. So that we didn't want a podcast that talked to industry people. We wanted a podcast that interviewed guests so we could have a guest perspective. We ran webinars, which were with more industry people. And then on the right, we had our own community. We call them the TouchStay Rockstars. So it's a private Facebook group where we've got about 1,400 members in that group. And we've been actively engaging with all those 3 channels to learn a bit more. And these are the outcomes of those things. I always used to hear, my guests don't read. They don't read. Whatever I tell them, they don't read. And whenever I would start talking to the person that said that a bit more about it, universally, it turned out that it was less than 1 in 10 that were problems. Most guests do read. We just remember the ones that don't, because they're the ones that are a pain in the backside. They're the ones that constantly ask us questions. I'm here to say that those guests do read. If you give them a nice, simple format to use that has answers that they know is valuable, they will read. And so over those summer months, June, July, and August, we had almost 500,000 guests accessing TouchStay. We had about, I forget what we had over the summer, probably about 13,000, maybe 14,000 properties. So that's a huge number of guests per property per month. Usually between sort of 6 to 12 guests per property per month use the product. So they do read. It's just a matter about how you present that information and show it with value. So a guest doesn't get something from you and they think, what is this? What is this weird thing? It has to have value. So you need to say, I'm sending you this because it answers all your questions, including how to find us, what times to check in. Tell them what it does include and they'll read it. This one, many of the panelists here will know this one because it's been in a couple of presentations, and I think it's one thing that's really interesting. It talks to the fact that as individual smaller business owners, those of you who have just a few properties, as opposed to the big property managers, you know you're doing a good job, you know you're being personal, but the data also proves that. The average review scores that are coming out for the smaller operators find that higher reviews tend to correlate with smaller business operations. So I think that's a kind of a big stamp of approval to say that even though there's lots of talk in this industry about consolidation and professionalization and bigger is better and all this no, there are millions of smaller operators like many of you listening today, and you are the ones that provide a superior experience because you are able to be personal. So I think that's a really important thing to take away. Next. Okay, here. Good surprises wow people. So Alyssa Sincotta, as you can see on the bottom here, Alyssa Sincotta was a guest on our podcast. She's married to a very famous professional photographer. And one of the things that came out of the very first podcast that we did with her was this notion that if I'm staying with somewhere unique with something unique, which is, let's be honest, our industry, we all have unique properties in unique locations. There's a huge value in providing guests more than simply the place to stay. Something that's only available to guests who stay with you. And I don't know what that answer is. Everyone will have a different answer to that. But if you can identify a few things that are only available to guests who stay with you and make that part of the experience you provide your guests, then you're leveraging on that very unique position that you have as an individual, as a small operator. This talks to it as well a bit, upsell your experience. So upselling doesn't have to be, come here and I'm going to sell you this tour and activity, or I'm going to try and, get more money out of you. As Alistair knows, running Higher Wiscombe, you have an all-inclusive price. You have a higher price for your properties because you're embedding in that lots of things that you do. And it's always about inspiration rather than execution. Just think creatively. 90% of what you can upsell comes from your inspiration. It doesn't have to be the obvious things. It can be little things. And I don't know what the answer is there, but there is lots that if you mine your brain, you'll figure out that you do, and you can use to upsell your experience and therefore your price. You must communicate more. This is my big one. As a guest, I frequently stay at places where I book, I get a booking confirmation, and then I get nothing until I arrive or shortly before I arrive. You guys may not be that. You may be one of the advanced people, but it's not been my experience. Universally, whenever I've stayed in Airbnbs, vacation rentals, holiday lets, name it what you want, the communication between booking and arrival is terrible. No sugarcoating it. It's awful. And there's such an opportunity to put your guests at ease, to cut down on the number of questions they ask you by getting on the front foot and communicating more with them. 3 to 4 times isn't enough. It's not enough. Tyann Marsink, who's our community ambassador here, she communicates 14 times. And before you groan and go, I can't communicate 14 times, that's too much, that's over communicating, how can I do that? It's easy. You program this stuff to do it. And you don't have to communicate 14 times pre-arrival. You can communicate 6 or 7 times with important information. Don't forget to book your restaurant. It's COVID. Spaces will run out. Don't wait till you arrive. Those kind of things. During stay, day 1 of check-in, a simple text message that's automated or a simple email that's automated. How's your first day been? Anything we need to be aware of? And then, continue that dialogue. It really does count, and it will. You won't end up being flooded with questions you have to answer, and you won't get into endless communications with guests. The mere fact that you communicate more means your guests understand that you are there for them if they need. And I think that's more important than the worry of, oh my goodness, I'm going to get into a big back and forth with guests. You won't. And the last one, well timed, given that this week is COP26, but social responsibility is now, and we call it social responsibility rather than environmental sustainability, because we don't want to, we made it part of our during COVID period, we made it a key thing of ours not to bang on about sustainability as an environmental thing, because sustainability is different things to different people. Some people support local homeless charities. Some people support underprivileged kids. Some people support tree planting. There's all versions of what social responsibility means. And I would encourage you, if you already do it, to make more of that, to have a voice, because as you see there, the survey, 73% of people, travelers, would be more likely to choose an accommodation if it's implemented sustainability practices. And that's from Booking.com Sustainable Travel Report in 2021. And if it's not about saving the environment, and your thing is that you want to help the underprivileged kids in your community, and you're doing that, tell your guests about that. Tell them what it is you do beyond providing a head on a bed. It does count. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Right, you're all now on the panel. I've got a range of questions for the panelists, but I'm going to start off by doing just a bit of a kind of vision summary for you webinar attendees. When you start hearing, 500,000 guests engaged with TouchStay this summer, when you hear that SuperControl has just transacted £1 billion worth of bookings this year, and I'm sure there's a statistic that can come from beyond pricing about how many people have seen an increase percentage-wise in their bookings. This is the word professionalization has come up a lot. This is the professionalization of your businesses. This is tools that are affordable, that you can use to make your business perform better for both your guests and for you. I mean, I can't tell you how much I relish the departure of the guest books in the holiday cottages. We only had three holiday cottages, but boy, oh boy, trying to keep them up to date. They used to pull out the list of restaurants and put it in the car and then not put it back. So you then have to go and find, God, Fridays, I spent more time on welcome books than I care to remember. So that's a professionalization on a scale. We will all be doing computerized pricing in the next few years. We just will. So, start looking at it so that you don't get left behind would be my advice. This is, everybody's doing it in terms of hotels and railways and airlines and car hire. The whole hospitality business is doing this. In anything bar meals. I don't want to suggest that you're going to be able to vary the price of a meal, whether you book it late or early, but certainly accommodation and movement in hospitality is going to be run by these systems. When you look at what Properly are bringing to the equation, you're going to be able to professionalize that too. We talked about the messaging. Andy talked about the messaging to the guests. Imagine being able to send a report to your guests en route to say that the holiday cottage is perfectly ready for you. It's been properly cleaned and inspected. Here's the photographic report and the sign off. Now, I doubt that everybody would scroll through every single photograph, but what confidence would that give the guest on their imminent arrival, that they're prepared to show photographs of how clean it is? But then spin that on its head, because I think that will mean that the cleaners will take greater care. So I think there's an improved audit from something like Properly. But I also think there's an honesty thing that Properly will help with. If you follow the hospitality forums, there's lots of people saying, stuff was taken or damage was done, and the guest denied that the damage was done by them. It was done when they arrived. Well, a nice photographic report sent to them pre-arrival should diminish that kind of activity too. So Properly works on a myriad of levels for me, and we will most certainly be looking at it here. So I think, gone are the days of the welcome guides in the books when we had the COVID restrictions, meaning that we had limited opening and restaurants could only take certain numbers of people and all the limitations we had. We put a lot more restaurants into our TouchStay, and that was very, very popular. When we actually came into the summer and everywhere was open, but they were short-staffed or very, very busy because of the staycation boom, we basically just put every single restaurant we could find into the TouchStay app so that they could find somewhere to go. Now, as things calm down, we will be taking some of them off because we want to go back to a recommended list. So we use TouchStay in a way we'd never have been able to use a guide in the cottages, because we could update it on an almost daily basis and put things like it's no longer open Monday to Wednesday, it's only open Thursday to Saturday. So this is live. So when you update it across all of the people who are going to look at it, not just go outside with a printed sheet. So I just wanted to give that as a kind of summary that all this tech does sound quite overwhelming, but actually I'm going to get some questions to ask from people who sent them in about how long it takes to set up some of this stuff. So I'm now going to throw some questions out, and I'm going to start with beyond pricing, and just say to Tobias, setup time. So if you we'll say that the average person viewing has got 3 properties. That's a sort of general average. So if you have 3 properties, what's the kind of time it takes to actually get that you'd need to allocate to get this right from the beginning?
Okay, so it's very, very quick to set up. So with SuperControl, we have an integration, so the form to apply can be accessed directly through SuperControl itself. Otherwise, you can sign up on Beyond Pricing's own website. In terms of the time taken, you just put in some basic business details and link your third-party account. So if it's SuperControl, then applying through SuperControl makes the link already. It's simply a question of putting in some basic business details, putting in an activation key after having enabled the properties in the account, which is just a click of a button, and that transfers all of the data straight over. If you're not using SuperControl and you're plugging Beyond Pricing directly into your Airbnb or the RBO account, then you would simply apply first for Beyond Pricing just by filling in a simple form and creating the account. And then it's just a question of plugging the listings in, which again is a very simple process. Whichever way you do it, you end up, as you saw on my account, with the properties in a list, and it will analyze the existing historical data and also the market data for the market that it will assign the properties to based on their location, and suggest already a base price and a minimum price. And then that's the basic setup. It will then populate, once you start to sync the prices through, which is again a click of a button, it will then populate with an individual nightly price for 12 months on a rolling basis.
Does it round to £1, or does it do its calculation and come up with a price like £717.42?
No, it rounds to the pound.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was another very quick question I thought I'd pop in there.
Absolutely.
Okay,
but no, it's a really straightforward process. And Beyond Pricing are also, they have a great help center. They're very responsive as well if there are questions during the setup process.
Okay, moving on to Andy, similar kind of question for you really. How much time, if you got this fictitious average of 3 cottages, do you think that it would take to get the app into a mode that it was useful for the customers? Obviously, you constantly improve it and add to it, both as TouchStay and both as the people populating their guides. But how long should you think about to set aside to get TouchStay into a useful app for your business?
One of the most frequently asked questions, unsurprisingly. And horribly, I'm going to say it depends, but I am going to qualify that. Honestly, I have seen people with 100 pages in their PDF, and I've seen people with 2 pages. And obviously, the time it takes to populate 100 pages in the digital guide versus 2 is night and day. However, most people who answer this question on our private Facebook group, because that's where it often comes up, say that within half a day, provided you've got a document already, you know, like you've already got your Word manual or your PDF or something, most of that content is copy paste into TouchStay. And provided you haven't got reams and reams and reams, half a day is a good general benchmark. If you've got more than one property and you've got the same information that appears in multiple properties, like how to contact us, checkout processes, check-in time, all those things are standardized. You only have to enter that content once, and then you can share it with the rest of your properties. So adding extra properties on top of your first one is a lot less than that. And as you've said, it's a fluid evolving process. So whatever I've created today, I always say to people, just get the basics in there. Don't stress on, you know, making it perfect. Just get the basics in there, get it out to your guests. Once you start getting their feedback and questions they ask that you realize you haven't put in there, log into the platform, add that question, you're done. And then you can evolve it over time and perfect it over time.
That's great. You answered 2 other questions in there without even knowing that they'd come in, Andy. So well done. So that was a really concise summary. Back on to beyond pricing, and a question that comes in on the PASC emails a lot is once you set it up, how much time do you spend actually maintaining it? I mean, you don't just leave the computer entirely to it, do you, Tobias, or do you have to go in and?
Almost, yes. So, I mean, one of the benefits for me of beyond pricing is actually how much time it saves me, because it's tracking demand. I don't have to worry about making sure that I've picked up on Scottish and English school holidays, on bank holidays, public holidays, events, and so on. So it saves me a lot of time because it's doing that automatically. And when I set it up, as I mentioned in my little presentation, I tweaked the base price a little bit and saw the booking pattern slightly change to what the system was also telling me through that health score was the correct pacing for my market, and I've basically have left it since then. So that's been basically the whole, almost all of a year, where I've done very, very little to tweak it. Maybe I've just put a manual override on the odd day or two for events that we were holding at our own property, for example, that I might want to do an increase, but it wouldn't have picked up otherwise. But otherwise, I've just let it run, and it's providing 12 months of rolling pricing going forward.
So is that a rolling 12 months forward?
Yes, it's a rolling 12 months, and it can be extended to 18. So certain larger properties that typically have a longer lead time would be 18. I don't know if Robert wants to just jump in really quickly and share his experience on this too.
Very similar experience. We set up with our own holiday homes on beyond pricing in about this time, 2019, and just because that question was coming up, because you were discussing it, I logged into my own beyond pricing account, and there's a little history. It shows you how often you've made changes, and I think we've probably tweaked it less than 10 times since then. So that is, we do not have any hassle, any time with pricing, changing prices once a year or whatever. We do have a large holiday home which gets a lot of events and weddings, and so we do have a longer lead time in there, and it works very well for that large property as well. What beyond pricing would say, and they're quite right, is that you should be paying attention to it and making sure that you're tweaking it every so often. So it isn't a truly set and forget tool, but it's taking care of your prices. So nearly everything that you are normally doing once a year, once every few months, is just handled every single day.
Okay, I have got some more questions for beyond pricing, but I'm going to bring Properly in because I've got some questions for them. Obviously, the inevitable setup time. Again, here we go again. We've got another app. We're going to have to preload the details in so that the cleaners can go along and go round you have to set the routine up, I guess, because each property will be different. I have three cottages. They're not all the same, so they would have to be set up, I guess. So what's the kind of investment in time wise for Properly so that you get a useful tool?
Yeah, I'll go back to the Andy McNulty comment. It's a piece of string, of course, because Robert's sitting there with a very large house, and will have a lot more activity going on in terms of how he needs to clean it, manage it, and inspect it. So, in terms of setting up properly initially, that's a very easy task, particularly if you're connected to a PMS like SuperControl. The PMSs are available, of course. And the OTAs, Airbnb, Booking.com, VRBO, etc., because it has dynamic connections to lots of systems. In terms of setting up the working with your cleaners or doing it yourself, then I would probably allocate about an hour to become familiar with that part of it and to set it up and to invite your cleaner and to familiarize themselves as well.
Okay.
Isn't a very long-winded task. If you are a micromanager, and we have lots of small managers, up to 20 or 30 properties, we do have an onboarding team that helps them set up their particular framework, because they will work in different ways with different properties at different times as well. So we have a support team behind that to initiate that. For individual owners, it's literally minutes to download it, on board, start looking at the skill sets and the checklists, and then I would think an hour to an hour and a half to become familiar with how to do it. Also to invite your cleaner or find cleaners within the marketplace as well.
And when does it go live? Is it live now? When does it go live?
Yes, there's with Quality and Tourism, we've been piloting this joint venture, which will evolve. I'm pretty sure over the last, I don't know, Deborah, 2 or 3 weeks. We've done a show together, and we've got a number of customers at the moment who are piloting it with us. So there is a link on the presentation page which will take you off to subscription. If you're a SuperControl customer as well, we also provide the information on how to connect to SuperControl, which will require authentication from SuperControl as well, from a request from us. So yes, it's live. And if I keep telling everybody, feel free to email me personally as well. More than happy to engage in this with anybody or any company who wants to pilot it with us.
Great stuff. So I'm going back to Beyond Pricing just for a moment. Most common question I get actually in the box, and it's come up, and a question in the thing is, can it actually whack the price up so much that it would freak the regular customer out? I'm looking at your face, Robert. I know you've only been asked that question 14,300 times, but it's going to come up time and time again because you're letting the computer do it. You haven't got that control that you wouldn't type a price going from £5,000 to £15,000, but the computer might. So how would you answer that?
So Tobias, I'll let you. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah. So the way that you retain control over how that pricing works is, as I mentioned, that base price. So that's the starting point for calculations. If you need to, you can set a price ceiling that it won't go above. Now, obviously, the whole aim of dynamic pricing is to get more revenue for you. And the system is not going to suggest pricing that is wildly beyond what it thinks is achievable based on the data that it's drawing from, historical and market supply and demand. So it's generally recommended not to put ceilings in to artificially limit what it will suggest, because it knows what it's doing. And that was one of my concerns initially about using it, was that it was going to way overprice myself. But actually, I have been very impressed and pleased to know what people are actually prepared to pay for my property. And I think I was actually underpricing myself significantly before I started using it. And also, without wishing to be sort of snobby, but actually we've got a better sort of guest since we started raising the prices a bit. So, but who really appreciated the property much better and weren't looking for just a sort of cheap holiday and get as much out of it as possible. So, so there are various things you can do if you wish to set parameters in a narrower way within which it can then adjust. But it's something to do only with a bit of thought behind it if absolutely needed.
Just to add a little extra detail to that, our own experience showed that there were times when we were too expensive previously, and Beyond tweaked prices down, and we got bookings that we hadn't been getting previously. So it does go in both directions. It's about finding the optimal price. So if no one's willing to pay that £15,000 price, then no one's going to book it. And that's why it will keep adjusting and adjusting and adjusting until it finds the optimal price within the range that you're specifying, so that someone will actually book. Yes, that price might be a lot higher than you've had previously, or indeed repeat guests who've been coming years on years will pay, but it will find a guest to book at that optimal price. And it's the same as if you all sit on a Ryanair plane, every single person's paid a different price to sit on that seat. And that price is the price that you are willing to pay. You're not going to complain because the person sitting next to you has paid less or more. It is just all about perceived value for money at a moment in time for the precious commodity, which is that date in your property.
Okay, I'm going to just go back to your data that you provided, Robert, and say that October pricing 2019 compared with October pricing 2021 shows a pitiful increase of under 6%. That the average isn't even, that people are putting their prices up, isn't even covering inflation. Self-catering holiday accommodation on a per person per night basis is way underpriced. Okay, so really these tools, the more people use these tools, the better, because it will help get us all better pricing. One thing that I know that does concern some people, Robert, though, with Beyond Pricing is it basically taking, you know, my sleep 6 or higher Wiscombe and just comparing the prices that people not necessarily on Beyond Pricing have put for their sleep 6s in Devon? Are they comparing other competitors' data in that way? Because their pricing could be wrong too, couldn't it?
Tobias, I think you can definitely answer that one very.
Yeah. So it's what it's doing is it's bringing data in from a number of sources. It's not just using your competitors' prices, because I mean, as you absolutely are correct in saying, you know, that pricing could be wrong. And you know, I've worked with enough clients to know that a lot of them will just look at their neighbour's cottage and say, well, my cottage is slightly nicer, so I'm going to take their prices and add, you know, £50 on top of that, for example. And that's absolutely not how it's working to bring us those pricing, to arrive at that pricing. What it's doing is that it is making sure that it's bringing in the market data, so the supply and demand data, as well as the data that's coming in from various different sources. So it's looking at other booking platforms, it's looking at trends in terms of booking overall and databases. And it also, as I mentioned, is comparing your property with properties that are letting for similar amounts to make sure that it's comparing like for like. But at the end of the day, you also have control. So by pitching your base price correctly, it means that you are initially giving it a guideline about where you are in the market, and then it's using that strata of data within your hyperlocal market in order to then suggest intelligent pricing.
Okay, right. I don't think we've got anybody see any outstanding questions. The panel have been answering questions, so I'll just see if there's any in there. In case anybody hasn't had a chance to read it, there is also this fear with Beyond Pricing that how does it work for last minute bookings? And what Robert's written here is because your very long lead time prices increase and the prices are managed as you go nearer the time of booking. If you're getting the pricing right, you should be have less late bookings anyway, but you can set those up to discount automatically, as you can do in SuperControl itself, actually. Yeah. So and
I get quite a number of last minute bookings filling in gaps. So we've got, you know, a fairly good lead time, but because we're bed and breakfast, we do get quite a number of fairly short lead time bookings. And actually, I've found it's been very good about filling in gaps where I otherwise wouldn't have got a booking, I think, because I was setting my pricing as a fixed price and it was a little bit too high probably to attract some of those last minute bookings. But I am getting them because it's automatically reducing closer to the time, because a booking is obviously better than the property or the rooms being empty for a night, and I've still got that fail safe of my minimum price in there. Yep. So that any bookings I'm getting are worth me taking, because I know they're going to at least meet my minimum, if not exceed it even slightly.
So I don't want to knock anybody on the webinar, but I do see on hospitality blogs, and you never know whether it's down to the users, error on the platform like Booking.com or Airbnb, where they see that they get bookings that come through at prices that they think they have never agreed. Now, I don't know whether that's Booking.com's error or plan or the owners not putting the information in correctly, but that wouldn't happen, you're saying, therefore, with Beyond Pricing, because you can set up the minimum price that you're prepared to take.
Yes, so yes and no. So obviously you are setting a minimum price. So any price that Beyond Pricing is either feeding directly into a third-party platform like Airbnb or VRBO, for example, or is feeding into SuperControl and then pushing out to other third-party platforms like Booking.com, that price is at least going to be at your minimum, if not more, and that's a nightly minimum. Now, obviously, with Booking.com, there are certain discounts that can be set up on Booking.com itself, like a Genius discount, like a rate plan, and so on. So often when those owners find that the prices are lower than they expect, it's because they've set up some discount directly there, and they haven't figured it into their thinking.
Yeah.
So
right. Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm going to call the webinar to a close now. I'm going to say thank you very much indeed once again to SuperControl for hosting it and making sure all the technology works. Thank you very much for that. Very appreciative of that. Thank you, Tobias, for taking the role of the Beyond Pricing representative, Richard and Deborah for Properly, which we really do have high hopes for. And as always, Andy, brilliant app. Keep up the good work, and we will see you all again shortly. Thank you very much indeed for attending today. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.